Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India. Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Namaste. Welcome to the session 8 of the course Yoga and Positive Psychology for Managing Career and Life. In this session, we are going to look at notion of self and well-being in yogic perspective. In this session, as like previous sessions, we will have a quick recap. We will look at how to distinguish the different sheaths or different koshas through which self is reflected. We briefly mentioned about the Pancha Kosha in the previous session. We are going to have more detailed discussion on that. We will examine the notion of mind. Notion of mind is very interesting and very intriguing for the contemporary science and technology field. What we can infer about the mind based on the notion or based on the concept of Panchakosha, that is what we are going to look at. We will look at the varied concepts of happiness in yogic system, how different diseases are connected to different koshas, that also we are going to look at. Then we will look at factors affecting the well-being at different koshas, metaphysics behind the yogic perspective of self and well-being, and towards the end we will look at a very interesting typology of the different levels of bliss and different levels of well-being. It is given in the Taittiriya Upanishad and that presents a very interesting perspective of different levels of well-being as prescribed in the yogic tradition. So, like all other session, quick recap. In the last session, we looked at the definition of health and well-being given in the Ayurveda, that is samadosha, samagnischa, samadhatu, malakriya, prasannatmendriya manah swasthya itya vidiyate. We discussed about what are the doshas, what are the agni, what are the dhatus, what is malakriya, and we also looked at importance of prasannata, importance of happiness at the level of senses, also at the level of man, which is important aspect of swasthya. This all is based on the notion of self, which is beautifully captured in the allegory of chariot given in the Kathopanishad. That is what also we discussed in the previous session. So, Indian perspective of health and well-being as it is reflected in Ayurveda and widely prescribed in the yogic tradition is captured in the word swasthya. Swasthya means self, sthita. Swa is self, stha is related to the term sthit, established. So, when we are established in our true self, that is swasthya, that is health, that is the foundation of well-being in the Indian perspective and the yogic perspective. And self includes physical, mental, emotional, intellectual and spiritual component. And stability means lack of diseases, positive approach towards overall quality of life. Opposite to swasthya is vyadhi. state of non-health, and that is also opposite to samadhi. So, disease according to the yogic tradition, we have to distinguish at this moment. In the last session, we looked at the source of diseases as described in the Charak Samhita, and that is agantava, which means which can be comparable to the diseases caused by disease causing agents come from outside. Then because of the nature of the person, because of the habits, these are the different sources of the diseases. In the yoga, which primarily particularly the Patanjali yoga, which primarily looks at the mental health or psychological health, it talks about panch kleshas, which are psychological afflictions, and these are the sources of the disease at the mental level or at the manomay kosh and vijnanamay kosh level. Panch kleshas are avidya, asmita, rag and dvesh and abhinivesh. Avidya is ignorance, ignorance of the ultimate reality. Asmita is egoism, identifying with non-self, identifying which is the fleeting nature, but if we start identifying that as our permanent self, that is the issue of asmita. Rag, dvesh, too much of attachment and too much of aversion with anything, that results into afflictions. And abhinivesh, clinging on to the life or fear of unknown, or in the normal life it is reflected in our tendency to perpetuate our name and fame and doing excess to meet that objective. In the Yoga Darshan, it talks about these 5 kleshas, which are the afflictions and which are the causes of mental ailments. You might remember the 3 caselets we looked at in the last session. The caselet of Gopal, who is fond of good food, and his liking for the food led him to the trouble. We had also a case of Samuel, who did not restrain his sexual relationships, and because of that he suffered, and case of Raja, who was not clear what is his want, what is his liking, what is his swadharma in his life, and he could not pursue what was natural aptitude of him, and because of that, in spite of being successful, looking successful professionally, he has lost the joy of life in his being. So, can you connect all these 3 cases with any of the 5 afflictions? First case of Gopal, the boy who did not control his urge to enjoy food, that is rag, that is avidya, because he did not give attention, did not consider the seriousness of not following the regime and discipline of right food. He was also too much attached to the sense of taste. The second case of Samuel is clearly the issue of his rag, means too much attachment to one sense. In his case, it was sexuality. It was also little bit a case of abhinivesh. He started identifying, having multiple partners, started giving him a false sense of asmita and abhinivesh, and that combination resulted into the situation in which he only suffered. Third case of Raja is misplaced asmita. He started confusing success with a certain type of profession, and he did not really discover his true self. So, misplaced asmita resulted into loss of joy in his profession. It is of course connected to little bit of avidya as well, because he did not give sufficient attention to importance of aptitude, importance of experimentation in life, importance of discovering uniqueness in our personality, all these are also in a way avidya, but it is reflected in the misplaced asmita. So, we can see that mental diseases or the sometime even the physical ailment are result of many psychological afflictions which are talked in the Yoga Sutra. At this stage, I would like to invite you to look at any problem or concern you see and you wish to attend, you wish to address in yourself, in your personality. That does not mean you are a problem child or you are a problematic person. That means we all are work in progress. Wherever, whichever stage of career and life we are, there is ample scope for all of us to improve further. So, please look at this question in light of the fact that wherever we are, we can move further, we can do better, and in order for us to be better professional or a better human being, what are the problems, what are the things if we can address, if we address in ourselves, we will be able to be more effective professional and more successful professional and more joyful human being. So, this can be related to physical fitness, time management, relationship management, our ability to solve problems, our ability to make decisions or any other challenges. At this stage, you can write down what is one thing which can make you better professional or more joyful and swasth human being. List those things and try to connect these things with the 5 kleshas, the kleshas of avidya, asmita, rag, dvesh, abhinivesh. That can be a good reflective exercise, because once we know the reasoning, once we know the actual afflictions, the basic afflictions behind these problems, we will be able to address these, because awareness is the beginning of our ability to address the problem. So, I invite you to do this reflection. Those who are registered for the NPTEL course, anyways they will be receiving a format in which they can do the reflection and then they can submit that as their assignment. In order to further understand the well-being and avoid diseases, let us understand the notion of self in more detail, because well-being is experienced in the self. In order to experience well-being, we must understand the notion of self. Once we have better understanding of self, we can do something about that. So, notion of self in the yogic tradition is accepted in the form of panch kosha. Panch means 5, kosha means layers or sheaths. These koshas are annamaya kosh, pranamaya kosh, manomaya kosh, vijnanamaya kosh and anandamaya kosh. Annamaya kosh is the most gross form of the self, that is comprises of the physical body, and that comes to in existence through food we eat. The second layer is pranamaya kosh, energetic field, that gives energy to all 3 koshas, that is comparable to the biomagnetic field, and that is also explained in the form of chakras and nadis and combination of that. Manomaya kosh is sheath or aspect of self which is reflected in emotions, feelings, likes, dislikes, fear, phobias, etc. So, that is a day to day experience of our mind, regular experience of the mind, and wisdom and higher mind is reflected in the Vijnanamaya kosh, or we can say Vijnanamaya kosh is the reflection of wisdom or higher mind, and that is related to inner conscience, inner voice, values, intellect, and Anandamaya kosh is the supreme, the subtlest part, that is reflected in the bliss, being self, the true nature as it is called. So, these 5 koshas are also clubbed into 3 shariras, 3 bodies, Sthul Sharir, Sukshma Sharir and Karan Sharir. Sthul Sharir, Sthul meaning gross. So, Annamaya Kosh and Pranamaya Kosh makes the Sthul Sharir. Sukshma Sharir is predominantly Pranamaya Kosh, Manomaya Kosh and Vijnanamaya Kosh, and Anandamaya Kosh is part of the causal body. It is also called Karan Sharir. Karan means cause, an ultimate cause of emergence of self is the Brahman, or in the Sankhya it is called Purusha. That is the most reflected in the that is the most refined reflection of Purusha in the human self is Anandamaya Kosh, and that is connected to the, that is actually a reflection of the Purusha, and that is why it is called Karan Sharir, the cause of emergence and reflection of all other 4 koshas. So, Sthul Sharir, Sukshma Sharir, Karan Sharir, which is constituted of these 5 koshas, is also one way of looking at self, which is followed in the yogic tradition. In the Journal of Evolution, same notion is explained, and I thought of giving this reference, giving the reference of this paper as well, so that those who are interested to read further can read, can download, so that those who are interested to know further, they can note down and download this paper. So, let us look at these koshas step by step. So, Annamaya Kosh, as I told, is constituted and sustained by fruit, food, and that is the grossest of all koshas. Pranamaya Kosh is the vital body. That is the basis of experience of the flow of energy in our system and world around us. You might have noticed that many a time 2 people suffer from same disease, they might be of the same age group, they might be both diagnosed correctly, might have given right and appropriate medicine, but still one person takes longer time for recovery and another person gets recover quickly. That can be inferred, that can be one example of the difference in prana, the strength of the Pranamaya Kosh. Pranamaya Kosh, as explained in the yogic tradition, is also reflected, it is also talked about in the form of chi, chi, or chai in the Japanese tradition as well as in the Chinese tradition. Pranamaya Kosh is understood in a very sophisticated way in the yogic tradition. There are 17 types of pranas being described in the yogic tradition, but 5, they can be clubbed into the 5. So, we are going to look at this 5, the typology of the 5 pranas. These are Vyan, Udan, Pran, Saman and Apan. So, Udan is active in the topmost area of the body, that governs the physical senses, mental strength, speech, these activities. Lower to Udan is Pran, and Pran, the location of Pran is described to be between the diaphragm and throat, and that controls the respiration, sensory perception and the distribution of the energy to other forms of pranas. Saman is responsible for distribution, and that is supposed to be located around the stomach and the lower to the diaphragm area, and that is the controller of the circulation of the blood and the circulation of the senses and nerves. Apan is the in terms of the location, it is lowest, It is related to elimination, birthing, menstruation, and these activities are governed by Apan Pran. These are further divided, we are not going to discuss it at this stage, but those who are interested can certainly find literature in the further division of these pranas. Then comes Manomaya Kosh. This is even subtler than Pranamaya Kosh and of course Annamaya Kosh. Manas and the 5 cognitive sense organ which are sight, hearing, touch, smell and taste, this is the constituent of the Manomaya Kosh. The sphere of feeling, dream, hopes, sorrow, pleasure, pain, all that occurs in this layer of self. Vijnanamaya Kosh is even subtler than Manomaya Kosh. It is related to knowledge and wisdom. It makes use of our intelligence and discriminative ability and the 5 cognitive senses. Compassion, intelligence, intuition, wisdom, these all are reflections of Vijnanamaya Kosh. To help in understanding action according to what is right and what is wrong, that decision also takes place in the Vijnanamaya Kosh. Last, or we can say the final sheath, is Anandamaya Kosh. This is the sheath of bliss around the soul or the causal body that is associated with and yet a finer level of consciousness. So, this is not soul. So, actually in the yogic tradition, Atma is the Karan Sharir, Atma resides in the individual being, that is the reflection of the Param Purush as described in the Sankhya. In the Vedanta, Brahman is reflected in the Jivatma. So, Jivatma is the Karan Sharir, the closest to Karan Sharir is the Anandamaya Kosh. The subtlest layer which distinguishes self and the Brahman or Prakriti and the Purusha, if we follow the Sankhya tradition, that is the layer of Anandamaya Kosh. When consciousness is refined and when our experience is anchored in this Kosh, joy and bliss and non-localized as well as without the happiness without any reason, and this Kosh is beyond knowledge and experience and beyond mind. It is the state of total harmony with the internal and external environment even as when one is engaged in action. It is about being, it is not about having something or doing something, it is the substratum of being on which everything else occurs. So, the question of managing mind is about managing all 4 koshas, or we can say the managing life is about managing all 4 koshas. I am talking about 4 koshas that can be managed. Anandamaya Kosh is difficult to manage. If we manage 4 koshas, Anandamaya Kosh naturally gets experienced in ourselves. So, whether it is physical ailment or mental ailment, it is caused at these 4 koshas, and if we have to experience well-being, we have to work on these koshas. Here comes the notion of mind or the question about mind. What do we call mind? Siegel is the very famous author in the field of neurology and neurosciences. The team of Siegel has developed a definition of mind. By the way, the definition of mind has been one of the most challenging tasks in front of the scientist. So, they defined human mind as a relational and embodied process that regulates the flow of energy and information. In this definition you can see that the mind is not equated with brain. So, brain is one aspect where mind occurs, but mind is all over. Secondly, mind is also not a localized phenomena, that is recognized in this definition. Stephen Parker, a very famous yogi and author, in his book Clearing the Path, compares the notion of Panchakosha with the Siegel's definition of mind. And Stephen Parker very beautifully juxtapose different aspects, different components of the definition of mind given by Siegel and his team, and compares that with each kosha. So, as the definition of Siegel says, mind is the embodied process that is comparable with the Annamaya Kosh, because Annamaya Kosh is also a body and it is the grossest aspect of self. Second aspect of Siegel's definition is that regulates the flow of energy, and Stephen Parker compares that with the Pranamaya Kosh, because Pranamaya Kosh is also sheath of subtle energy. Then comes the third component of definition of mind given in the Siegel's work, that is information. Mind is embodied process that regulates the flow of energy and information. If we look at our sense organs, if we look at our senses, what are these? These are nothing but instruments of capturing information. So, these are the sheath of sensory mentation. So, not of the higher mentation that takes place in the Vijnanamaya Kosh, but the lower mentation or more sensory aspects, those are captured by the Manomaya Kosh, and this is nothing but information. According to some other definition, it can be looked at as the feedback, because emotions are also feedback and emotions are generated through senses. Probably the senses are the primitive form of emotions. These all are located, these all take place in the Manomaya Kosh. And fourth aspect of the Siegel's definition is relational and embodied process that regulates the flow of energy and information. That element of regulation is related to Vijnanamaya Kosh, and that is the sheath of higher mentation as well. But mentation, buddhi here is not only meaning our conscious buddhi, our conscious decisions, our conscious thoughts. The regulation process that takes place through brain, that is also part of the Vijnanamaya Kosh. So, brain is not located only in the brain, but brain is certainly very important aspect of Vijnanamaya Kosh and aspect of mind. But mind is not limited to brain, but that is certainly there, and regulation is very important aspect of Vijnanamaya Kosh that takes place predominantly, or that is governed predominantly through different secretions of brain. Anandamaya Kosh is not captured in the Siegel's definition as defined by kind of interrogated by Stephen Parker, and he describes Anandamaya Kosh as the highest and subtlest mind body sheath made up of bliss. If we look at Indian tradition and few words which are pretty common in most of the Indian languages about the happiness, these are associated with different aspects of self. So, first aspect is trupti, that is predominantly connected with Annamaya Kosh. So, after having food, the term used in the Indian languages is trupti, that is satisfaction of sensual pleasure. Higher to that is harsh, ullas and santosh. Pranamaya Kosh and Manomaya Kosh predominantly experience harsh and ullas, that is excitement associated with some event, feeling of pleasantness, and associated with the experience of natural beauty, being pleased by the interpersonal interactions. So, all these things are, when experienced, we say we had experience of harsh and ullas, that is pranamaya kosh and manomaya kosh, that is experienced in the pranamaya kosh and manomaya kosh, and santosh is some bit of that is experienced in manomaya kosh, and predominantly it is experienced at vijnanamaya kosh. Santosh is the self regulation, mindfulness, self control, being contented. These things are not sign of annamaya kosh or pranamaya kosh or manomaya kosh. Santosh is experienced at vijnanamaya kosh. Vijnanamaya kosh makes the decision about being contented. You can give lot of pleasure to the body and body will not be satisfied. In fact, if we give more pleasure to the body, body seek more pleasure. Similarly, pranamaya kosh and manomaya kosh, you can give more harsh and ullas, excitement, pleasing experiences, pleasing interactions. People, these koshas will find it more and more, they will seek it more and more, they get it. However, santosh is the satisfaction combined with the regulation. So, there is a sense of satisfaction, but at the same time there is a contentment. So, in the santosh, the seeking more is diminishes, and that is experienced in the vijnanamaya kosh. And anandamaya kosh is the bliss, ecstasy, non-localized, non-causal ecstasy, that is experienced through meditation, that is also experienced through offering our talents, offering our aptitude for the cause of the world, for the cause which is higher than our individual manomaya kosh, pranamaya kosh, etc. So, anandamaya kosh is the experience which is pursued through the different forms of yoga. You might remember we talked about karma yoga, jnana yoga, bhakti yoga and raja yoga, 4 predominant types of yogas. Ultimately, these yogas are the instruments or the pathways to experience anandamaya kosh. Those who are registered for the NPTEL course, they must have received a link for the assessment of their satisfaction with the different aspects of the self. So, P is related to physical, I is related to intellectual, E is related to emotional, R is related to relational and S is related to spiritual. This Pearce inventory is forwarded to those who are registered in the NPTEL course, and that helps us to capture our satisfaction with these physical, intellectual, emotional, relational and spiritual aspects. If you look at P, the physical is more related to the annamaya kosh, intellectual and emotional and relational are related to manomaya kosh and vijnanamaya kosh, and S is more related to anandamaya kosh and vijnanamaya kosh. This inventory do not have questions or items related to pranamaya kosh, but if we have satisfaction at all these aspects, we can naturally believe that our pranamaya kosh is healthy, or inversely we can say until the pranamaya kosh is healthy, we cannot experience well-being at physical, intellectual, emotional, relational or spiritual level. So, do you want to know what are the various psychosomatic disorder associated with the different sheaths, predominantly associated with the different sheaths? So, there are 4 phases of psychosomatic disorders. You might be interested to also know, as different aspects of well-being are connected to different aspect of our self or different koshas, psychosomatic disorders also must be connected to different aspect of the koshas or different koshas. Psychosomatic disorder originate from the mind and then it filters to the subtle energy of the body called the vital life force, and then slowly settle into the physical body and resulting the damage to the weakest organ, affecting the physiology and functioning of those organs. So, psychosomatic disorder emerge through 4 phases. First is the psychic phase, second is psychosomatic phase, third is somatic phase, and fourth is organic phase. Disorders first occur at psychic phase, meaning in the manomay kosh or vijnanamay kosh or pranamay kosh. When it stays there for long time, it is reflected into the psychosomatic level, where it is at the prana and also at the gross body. After that, it result into the gross body, and then it captures the all or multiple organs of the body. At all 4 koshas, disorder can occur. So, vijnanamay kosh and manomay kosh has psychic phase. The characteristic of the disorder at the vijnanamay kosh and manomay kosh are related to persistent psychological and behavioral symptom of stress or irritability. This is also reflected in the disturbed sleep. Disorders at the manomay kosh and pranamay kosh, they are comparable to psychosomatic phase, and if the stress continue in the vijnanamay kosh and manomay kosh, it start occurring at the manomay and pranamay kosh. It appears in the generalized physiological symptoms such as hypertension, tremors, anxiety, depression, mild depression start occurring at this stage. Somatic phase occur at pranamay kosh and annamay kosh, that is reflected in the malfunction of the organs. At this stage, one begins to identify the beginning of the disease state. So, before disease actually occur in our at the body level, it already happens at the psychic phase in the vijnanamay kosh, manomay kosh and pranamay kosh. And when disease fully occur at the annamay kosh, that is called organic phase, that is the full involvement of so called diseased state with the physiological changes such as ulcerated stomach or chronic hypertension or many other type of diseases we keep noticing. Yoga is the therapy as well as preventive mechanism at all 5 koshas and all 4 phases of the disorders. So, till now we have seen, in order to understand well-being, we need to understand different layers of self or different koshas. These koshas are prone to different disorders, and if we have to live a life of well-being, if we have to manage ourselves, we have to manage all these koshas. So, yoga places great importance on proper healthy lifestyle, because healthy lifestyle is prerequisite for healthy living and avoiding the diseases. For that, it is prescribed to achar, vichar, ahar, vihar and vishranti. Achar is healthy activities on a regular basis, vichar is related to thought, attitude, ahar is related to food, vihar is related to proper recreational activities and relaxation of mind, pursuing of the hobbies. Vishranti is related to rest or mental peace or sleep. The foundation of health is not only in food, certainly not in medicine, it is in all 4 aspects: achar, vichar, ahar, vihar and vishranti. If you connect these 4 aspects with our caselets, you can further understand the importance of these. In the case of Gopal, the food loving boy, he missed out on the right ahar. The case of Samuel, who had an unregulated sexual intimacy with multiple partners, his situation can be explained with improper vichar and improper vihar. The case of Raja, who was not able to find his true calling and not able to live according to his aptitude and his swadharma, this case is related to vihar and vichar. When vichar and vihar were not in harmony, he ended up in a profession which was not at all of his liking, and that resulted into problem in his inability to experience the vishranti, experience the deep sleep, experience the relaxation. So, for the well-being we need all four, and for the well-being we need to work on all koshas. So, ahar, that is related to body, it nourishes the body. Vihar, which is related to physical tuning with mind, and Vishranti, which is related to mental peace through body. These are more physical aspect. I am saying more physical aspect because these are reflected more in the physical aspect, but they are deeply connected to the mental aspects, as we have been looking at all through. Mental factors are more related to vichar, vikar and vivek. Vikar is mental tuning with the body, and when that tuning is disturbed we call it vikar. Conscience is the, or vivek is the true reflection of the Vijnanamaya Kosh, and that is the charioteer, that is the charioteer who holds the rein. The allegory, in the allegory of Kathopanishad we looked at in the previous session. Vivek or conscience is the ultimate mental factor because it controls over nonsense. It controls to what extent we can allow senses to enjoy the pleasure, to what extent we can allow man to indulge into pleasure, to what extent it allows Vijnanamaya Kosh to pursue the logic. So, Vijnanamaya Kosh can be the ultimate controller in the form of Vivek. So, physical and mental factors are parallel to each other. They work independently as well as collectively, and their correlation is very interesting, and we need to be mindful of this correlation. Until we are mindful of this correlation, we will not be able to maintain our well-being. So, maintaining well-being, managing self is being conscious of the interaction of our physical and mental factors. Some of you might be wondering, what is the metaphysical basis of all these typology? From where the emergence of the notion of 5 kosha happened? From where we looked at the different tendencies and how we can attribute different tendency, how they emerged. For that, Sankhya gives a very sophisticated perspective, how individual self is deeply connected to the universal self. This explains through the interaction or combination of Purusha, which is the pure consciousness, and Prakriti, which is the source of creation. So, metaphysics of the yoga suggests that Purush, which is the pure consciousness, that is the substratum in which everything else is operated, everything else is manifesting. It is beautifully compared with the stage. So, you must have seen a stage where orchestras are played or where drama is played. The stage, the very space is comparable to the Purusha. In that stage, different characters or different tune occur, that is the Prakriti. Purush and Prakriti, they combine in the presence of Mahat, that is the divine intelligence. So, combination of Purush and Prakriti occurs through Mahat or Buddhi, that is divine intelligence, and Mahat result into Ahankar. From there the identity occurs. Identity start occurring, and as it occurs, it is reflected in the three aspects: inertness, activity and enlightenment. Sattva, Raja, Tam. Sattva is light, Rajas is activity, Tam is inertness. All three are important for Prakriti to get manifested. All the manifested form of Prakriti, all the aspects or manifestations of Prakriti, what we call animate or inanimate, they exist because they have combination of Sattva, Raja and Tam. These three gunas are reflected in the Manas, Jnanendriya and Karmendriya. Manas we discussed, Jnanendriya are the sense organs, Karmendriya are the organs with which we do action. These three are reflected in Tanmatras and Panchabhutas. Tanmatras are the subtlest sources of the Indriyas. Shabd, Sparsh, Roop, Ras, Gandh, these are the Tanmatras. Shabd occurs in the Akash, ether. Sparsh includes Akash as well as air or Vayu. Roop has the form that also includes Vayu and Akash. Ras, all forms of liquid, they are the reflection of Jal, that includes Agni, Vayu and Akash as well, and Gandh, that is reflection of Prithvi Tattva, or that includes all four previous ones as well. So, Tanmatras are captured through different tattvas, and these tattva result into Vat, Pitta and Kapha. They make the gunas or Prakriti. So, that is how Purush and Prakriti result into self, and that self reflects the Vat, Pitta, Kapha, what we discussed in the previous session. So, Triguna, which are the psycho-spiritual constitution, and Tridosha, which are the psychophysiological constitution, these two by combining result into personality, result into self. Vat, Pitta, Kapha, Sattva, Rajas and Tam. Sattva, Rajas and Tam are the three gunas. Vata, Pitta, Kapha are three doshas. Doshas does not mean over here drawbacks or errors. Doshas means that where disturbance is reflected first. So, these are the Vata, Pitta, Kapha. These three things, the combination of these three and combination of Sattva, Rajas and Tam are unique in everybody. That is why everybody has to find their uniqueness. Everybody has to discover their uniqueness. Everybody has to discover their unique aptitude. Our well-being starts when we start discovering and reflecting our uniqueness. The conscious process of well-being requires being conscious of our Trigunas and Tridoshas and acting according to that. Other animals are naturally acting according to their Tridoshas and Trigunas. They are programmed by the nature. Human being has the special capability of discrimination, conscience. They have lot of autonomy. They can carry out their life in multiple levels, and that is why they have to consciously balance Triguna and Tridosha, and that is the essence of managing self and managing career. If you look at the psychological perspective of well-being and happiness, and if you compare that with the Indian perspective of well-being and happiness, you see that Indian perspective includes one unique thing, which is transcendental. Indian perspective recognizes hedonism. It also recognizes psychological and social well-being, but it includes transcendental aspect. It also includes the collectivist aspect. Indian perspective says that individual well-being is actually not possible. Individual well-being is always collective, it is always inclusive. So, hedonistic perspective is essentially characterized by maximizing pleasure and avoiding or minimizing pain. Indian perspective has transcendental as well as collectivist perspective as well. If you compare Indian philosophy with the Chinese philosophy and the Western philosophy, and this comparison is given in a YouTube film produced by Vishuddhi Films. The title of the film is Dharma, the Root of the Indian Civilization. I strongly recommend that to watch that YouTube film, Dharma, the Root of Indian Civilization. In that, a comparison is mentioned between Western civilization or Western culture, Chinese culture and Indian culture. Western culture, according to that reference, aims at winning over nature. Chinese culture aims at living in harmony with nature, and Indian culture, the ultimate ideal for Indian culture is transcending the nature and being established in the Purusha consciousness or established in Brahman. So, that is the difference in the philosophical perspective towards life, and that is reflected in the Indian system in its perspective of well-being and happiness. And this is very sophisticated system, and that sophistication is reflected in the Anandavalli given in Tattri Upanishad. It gives a very interesting algorithmic picture of the increase of joy or ultimate well-being. So, the unit of joy identified in the Anandavalli is a youth, a noble youth in the prime of his age, most swift and alert, perfectly whole and resolute, most vigorous and of learning and of good learning, and that of him belongs the entire earth laden with all riches. That is the one measure of human joy, that is taken as the unit. So, 100 of such unit result into one Mano Gandharv. So, joy of such 100 entities or 100 of this measure result into one Mano Gandharv. 100 of Mano Gandharv constitute joy of one Gandharv. 100 of Gandharv constitute the joy of one Dev Gandharv. The joy of 100 Dev Gandharv result into one Pitra. The joy of 100 Pitra is equivalent to one Karmadev. Joy of 100 Karmadev is equivalent to one Janmadev, and joy of 100 Janmadev is equivalent to joy of one Indra. Joy of 100 Indra is equivalent to one Brahaspati, and joy of 100 Brahaspati is equivalent to joy of Brahma. I can certainly not claim that I have understood that algorithm, but I take the reference of the two scholars. One scholar, Dr. Nagaraj Paturi, explains this typology as it can be experienced in the human self. Another scholar, Dattaraj who explained to me in the form of these being independent entities, and for that also he has given some further references. What Nagaraj Paturiji suggests, that these joys are hidden in the human self. For example, the joy we draw through music and dance, that is much more than riches or food, and that is comparable to Gandharva. Similarly, the joy of being generous, the Devata means that which gives. So, when we experience the joy of giving something, in that moment we are in the Devata state of consciousness and Devata kind of joy. Some people, they make effort in giving away, giving something. Some people have natural tendency to be giving. They have so much, they have a kind of attitude and aptitude, wherever they are, they start giving to their surroundings, to their social and natural environment. So, these are Janmadev. Sometime when we experience this kind of self, that is the joy of Janmadev. So, Paturiji explained that which can be experienced at the psychological level. What I mean to say is that joy has no limits. An Indian system, yogic system, has developed many techniques and methods to experience these joys, but ultimately the joy is of Brahman. Brahmanand is the ultimate joy, and that is transcendental in nature. That is the objective, that is the ultimate what Indian system and yogic system aim at, and that is what yogic system tries to equip human being to experience in their life. So, in that aspect this typology should be considered, should be referred. Now, the question is, if joy is transcendental and hedonism is also part of that, psychological and sociological well-being are also important. They are not negated in the Indian tradition, but it also talks about collectivist nature of joy, collectivist nature of well-being and transcendental aspect of well-being. The question is, how do I indulge? How do I live? That answer is given in the first verse of Upanishad, Ishopanishad. By the way, I must tell you, Ishopanishad is greatly admired by Mahatma Gandhi as well. Mahatma Gandhi somewhere wrote that if all the scriptures of the Hinduism are destroyed and only Ishopanishad remains, Hinduism can survive, Hindu tradition, Hindu culture can survive. So, the first shloka of Ishopanishad says that Ishavasya sarvam yat kincha jagatyam jagat ten tyakten bhunjitha ma gridha kasya svidhanam. Ish, which is comparable to Brahma, has enveloped whatever is there in the existence. That is the first line. That is prescribed, that is not in contrary to what Sankhya tradition also says. Purusha, that which envelops everything, which is the substratum, ultimate substratum. So, Ish is mentioned in that term. Second line tells us, how do I indulge and live? So, this line suggests that when well-being includes hedonism, psychological as well as social well-being, but it is also transcendental in nature, how we should indulge. And that is, the indulgence is of tyag poon indulgence, not being connected to, not being attached with any kind of joy. If we are not attached to one kind of joy, we can transcend those, and by keep transcending we can experience the different levels of joy which is explained in the Anandavalli. Ten tyakten bhunjita. We can experience the joy, we can experience the bhog only when we are able to sacrifice that, when we are able to transcend that, and that is reflected in another sutra of Prasthantrayi, which says न ज्ञानेन न कर्मणा न प्रजया त्यागेन एकेन आत्म तत्व मानशु. Atma Tattva, the self knowledge, which is the ultimate joy, experience the ultimate self, which is Brahman, can occur not through jnanen, means knowledge, not through action, not through consumption or indulgence. It can come through sacrifice. So, sacrifice is not the ultimate sacrifice, sacrifice of whatever we can sacrifice. So, when we keep moving ahead in terms of our ability to not get attached to one form of joy, we can experience higher forms of joy, and that can result into enlightened living. And that is reflected in the second shloka of the same Upanishad, which says that kurvanne veh karmani jijivishekchatam sama. We should indulge into karma, we should indulge into action with the desire of living long. Evam tvai nanyathe na karma lipyate nare. Not when we indulge into life with the sense of sacrifice, sense of tyag, we can transcend, we can experience the transcendence, and we should live like this, and we should desire to live like this for 100 years, and that is the process through which we can experience ultimate joy in our life, we can experience ultimate well-being in our life. So, in this session we looked at some of the esoteric looking concepts. These are certainly can be understood only with the experience, but nonetheless it is important to mention that, and I hope some of you might have better insights about this. Some of you might have some experiential basis of these levels of joy. If you are one of that and watching this video, you are most welcome to write us, and our team is actually systematically indulge into the research process about the joy and well-being, and we are not dry researchers, and we are not just researcher in the field. All the team members are the serious sadhakas as well. So, our PhD scholars who are working in this field of well-being through the yoga, they not only study well-being in yoga, but they are also committed practitioners. They are regularly practicing yoga. So, there is a experiential basis of our work. So, if you are someone who have experienced some aspect of these joy, you are most welcome to write down. We end this session with the definition of the well-being as given in the yogic tradition and captured beautifully by Professor Krishna Kumar's paper, that it is about hedonism, but it is also about transcendental and collectivist, and for that we need to manage at all 5 koshas, and that is the essence of managing self from the yogic perspective and the Indian perspective.